June 7th, 2022, and we are at the House of Prayer. What's it called, Helen? Plattsburgh House of Prayer? Is that the official name? I don't want to get it wrong. Plattsburgh House of Prayer. Is this Broad Street, or what is this? This is Broad Street. All I know is I turn here, turn there, and I get around. I don't I don't pay attention to
the street names,
what
right?
streets are.
I just know where I need to go, and I know how to get there.
Yeah, I'm just learning where Boynton Avenue is. I go there all the time, but I haven't seen this guy since Sunday, so I said, gee, here it is, a Tuesday, so I might as well catch him again.
Yep.
And June 7th, 1983.
Is that when?
That's when Hometown Cable first started. I was at South Acres Field in northeastern Clinton, and Peru girls were playing the Section 7 softball championship, and that was the first ever thing, 39 years ago.
Wow.
So I had to have something here to start the 40th year. So Bob, you were the first thing we're going to do here in the 40th year. Robert St. John, Bob St. John, and what are you going to talk to us about tonight?
Talk about the frog farm, Mr. Neuenfeld, who originally came from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and started up the frog farm in 1937 in Champlain, Perry Mills.
Perry's Mills.
Perry's Mills, yes. There's still people upset with the way it used to be pronounced and the way it is now, and even spelled. So, but yeah, just a little background information and kind of what transpired through the years and when it started, when it ended, and some of the people that were involved working there. And just to give a little history of what people may not have realized, that there was actually a frog farm in the town of Champlain.
Yes, and we're here. We should mention the Clinton County Historical Association is why we're here, so we got to make sure to mention that. It's easy to forget that because Clinton County Historical Association does so much that you just assume everybody knows that what's happening here.
Right.
We're here because of that.
But yes, and I've worked closely with the Clinton County Historical Association on different projects or whatever. We have had can't remember when it was, but we actually did a tour when we did the cemetery tour along with the frog farm, and we had a little speaking engagement there. And of course, you have been up there when they've had different projects that they've been working on because of the Lamprey situation. I think it's been covered pretty good, but there has been some new information that is
old information.
Old and new.
Well, it can't be new. It hasn't been there in 50 years. So it's new old information.
The property, as far as what we're finding now with the property, so that's.
So you've been doing a little excavating there.
Doing a little bit of clearing, so now people, if they want to, come up, as long as I know that they're coming up or whatever to walk through the property on a tour to see the canals, we can now walk right up to the canals and they can look down in, and there's still the remnants of all the cages and everything that they used to keep the frogs in. That's still in the canals. So.
And, I didn't realize. I don't know if you know Sandy Phillips, Sandy Sandell,
right.
Joanne Phillips. Her father came here to work there, and
right. Yeah, he's one of the names that I have here as far as one of the workers that at one time had worked there. So yes.
Yeah. And are you going to touch on the World War II and the problems he had?
Well, I'm still not convinced. In fact, I came across an article in the Rutland magazine or whatever, where it stated that he was actually in a prisoner of war camp or whatever, and I could never find any information on that, but that's what's reported in this the Rutland Mainliner or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So as far as that, I don't know. And of course, I mean, they said that because he was German or whatever,
right.
that was suspected or whatever. Right. But as far as any proof or whatever, it's
right. Just
can't
like
find anything. The rumors.
Yeah, and we locked up all the Japanese heritage people, so why wouldn't we be suspicious
Right.
of the German people? So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm sure you haven't found any evidence that he was some kind of a German spy, but
Right.
because he was German,
Right. It
you know,
was
people were nervous,
right.
and, you know,
Concerned.
overreacted maybe, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So-
So it's an interesting story. If you grew up in Champlain, you certainly heard about the Frog Pond. I think the first show that Hometown Cable did with it was with Bill LaBelle.
Right.
Bill gave a little talk on that, and your
My
former
stepfather.
yeah.
Right. Ron Marquardt.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So he
Yep.
gave us what he knew at the time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we will learn something new, but it's going to be old stuff. We're going
Right.
to learn old stuff new.
News. Right.
Old new stuff
exactly.
tonight.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm sure most of the people who will be watching this, even if they've seen it before, would love to hear it again. And there's going to be a lot of people who've never heard of it. And
Right. And so get it out there, and it's one of I don't know how I would say as far as a quirk or whatever, or part of the North Country.
Yeah.
You know that this was in operation. So
Okay. All right. Anything else, Bob?
at this time, no, I can't think of anything, Calvin. I just want to thank you for, as always, for being here.
Well, I
So
needed something for my 39th anniversary show
okay.
here, so to start the 40th year. So I said, well, what
well,
better?
then I feel
what
honored
better?
then. Thank you.
All right. And thanks to Alan Nurska for making sure that I'd be here tonight. You gonna come over and talk to me, Alan? Yeah, she's coming right over here. All right. Unexpected pleasure here. Come right here where Bob was standing, and I'll make sure the camera knows where you are. Yep, the camera knows right where you are.
Okay, good, good.
You had a walking tour, didn't you, recently, or is that coming up?
Actually, it rained, so
Rained.
we headed inside. I have a
walking
virtual
tour inside.
I have a virtual tour of the oval, and then we have the actual walking tour. So,
Oh.
but we haven't rescheduled yet. But
Okay, so that's the U.S. Oval.
yeah, and
Former-
it covers everything. You know, they started some of those buildings. You know, they started building in about 1894. So, and we talk about those, and then we get into the chapel because the chapel volunteers will open up for us. So it's very, very nice. But you have to be able to walk about a mile and stay out there for I don't know, about an hour and a half.
So it's not for everybody.
I guess not. Although some gentleman last year came with a
walker?
wheelchair. No, a wheelchair.
wheelchair,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, just zipped around, so it was fine. It worked well. Yeah. I think he even got in the chapel. So yeah, yeah.
Oh, good.
Not in Carroll. One of our board members opens up her house. She's on the Oval, the officers' quarters, and so that's not handicap accessible, but
Right.
certainly everything else seems to be. Yeah.
Yeah, that was built a long time ago, so it wasn't
Oh, yeah.
wasn't handicapped accessible, and it's not an active. Well, it's active, but not active all the time. You know, there's still people once in a while who might get married there or whatever. But
Well, the chapel, the
Yeah.
chapel's handicap accessible. It's very, very nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so CCHA. So we were very lucky when the Air Force left. They left the building left us with an elevator.
Oh.
Yeah. So we're good.
very good. And what is your title again? Your
I'm the director at the Clinton County Historical Association. Yeah.
personal tours? Whatever.
I do. Yes, we all do. Yeah. There are a couple of us that do that. Yeah. We have all new exhibits because during COVID, that's what we took the time to redo our exhibits. So everything's new. So
So no, everything is old.
the old stuff, we have new old stuff out.
Okay.
Different, I should say. Different old stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So.
You don't need new stuff in a museum. You need old stuff.
I know. But you know, we
So
were
what-
talking recently. You know about the three. Oh my goodness! I've just never. 300 years in the Champlain Valley. That was written by Jeanette Tuttle. Do you remember that book? That's where you. Yeah. Anyway, we were talking recently that we should start recording all these different things that have happened in the last 100 years because this book that she wrote stopped in about 1919, and so somebody should be picking picking it up and starting again. So
Yeah.
I think we should, maybe CCHA should do that.
Yes, I think so. Because 1609 was when Sammy made his trip through here.
I know. Yeah.
So that's,
Well, he didn't
foreign to
really,
him.
right?
He made his trip. He didn't discover the lake, but he made the trip.
He didn't see us, but
No, he didn't see us.
yeah,
He saw
because we're
James
too
Daw-
new.
He saw James Dawson, but he didn't see us. No.
Hi.
Okay, so what are your exhibits?
Well, we have the Prohibition, Roam Across the Border Revisited. So it was, and with the help of Larry Gooley, who has a new book, or maybe it's not so new anymore after COVID, but on that. Booze, I should try to, do you know what the title is? Booze something.
It's very
Booze,
alliterative.
bottles and
It's very
beer or
alliterative,
something
yeah.
like that. Yeah, it's it's very good. And so we sort of used his expertise to put this together, and the expertise of Dick Soper, who we have now at the museum. He's on our board. He was with the Transportation Museum, so he is really adding a lot to. Adding a lot to. So we have it more on transportation now, and he was instrumental in a lot of the building a lot of the Prohibition exhibit. I think you're going to come over and maybe
Yeah, we
interview
gotta
everybody.
do.
Yes.
We gotta do that
Yeah.
before it gets too late here.
Yeah.
For the
It'll be up for a
outlawed
little
again. Outlawed again. You know.
I know. Right. Right. Yeah.
Yes, in fact.
You have to read the old diaries on how to get by that, because everybody that comes in, well, maybe not everybody, but most people that come in have an ancestor that was involved. Oh yeah, my grandfather, so people were sort of bragging about it. I think they are today
Yeah,
anyway.
they are today. Yes.
Yeah. It was pretty dangerous though in those days.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. You know, those are real bullets. That,
I know.
that were getting shot
Really,
at
really,
people,
yeah, yeah.
And you had real, besides the ones up here who weren't probably all that criminal minded, except they wanted to make a few bucks.
Yeah.
You had some real outlaws, Al Capone and those guys. So you had some real characters, and
Yeah.
so.
But ours is pretty gentle. But it shows pictures. It shows the pictures of what happened because we were fortunate enough to have pictures. What we don't have, we didn't have a lot of artifacts from the time. But Dick Soper built a diorama to show the different aspects of the things that went on during Prohibition. So it's an interesting exhibit. Yeah.
So we'll definitely have to.
And we also we had our 75th anniversary 2 years ago, CCHA did, and one of our volunteers put together a whole room of things that actually she liked in our collection. So she pulled their bits and pieces all over of things that have been donated to us over the years, and it's very interesting also because I've seen people go through and say, wow, so it's a wow exhibit also.
Those kind of some of the highlights over the years.
Yeah. So
Okay, so when are you open?
we're open Wednesdays to Saturday from 10 to 3, and by appointment. So if somebody just absolutely can't get there and needs some research or wants to see something, we kind of get flexible. But yeah.
Grandma Brown's in town for
Yeah.
Monday
Only on Monday. So
Yeah.
we try
you
to
try.
do what we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're volunteering, so we can't.
Yeah, we're all volunteers. We have a couple part-time staff, and we have some wonderful interns. We had a couple of grants for interns this summer, so it's very youthful right now. Very nice, very nice. Yep.
Good. Get them while they're young.
Yep. They started actually today. Yeah. So there are 3 students. So we're very fortunate. Yeah. Come over and meet them. Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Helen, that
Ah.
I should know here?
Well, we have a busy summer. Jackie Madison is speaking to us the first Tuesday in July and here on her research that she's done in the Adirondacks on black families in the Adirondacks. And then we have Sunday on the Island. Twice we're providing transportation. People pay for it, of course, over to Valcour Island, and the lighthouse is open. Bluff Point Lighthouse is open all that day, and of course the lighthouse is open every Sunday in the summer from 1 to 3. All volunteers.
If you got your own boat.
If you have your own boat, yes, or kayak or canoe, yeah.
Or you're a good friend of Roger Harwood.
Yeah. I've heard that's true. I've heard that's true. I know that's true. So, Michael Cashman's going to be speaking with us about his project, the Battlefield Memorial
Okay,
Gateway, and so this is going to be a busy August. So, and July. Oh, I've skipped July totally, didn't I?
We're only in June here, June 7th.
And we're going to have a cemetery tour of the town of Clinton.
I wonder whose idea that was.
Well, yes. No, actually, yes. Actually, we went. And we
Jerry
the
and
town
Mary.
historian, Rebecca LeClaire is going to host it. So that's going to be nice. Yeah. So lots going on.
All right. Next up,
Yep,
almost
next up,
momentarily,
yep,
will be
I better
Bob
start.
St. John. All right.
Remember that?
I'm Helen Nurska, I'm Director of the
Usually
County
take
Historical
responsible.
Association, and I'm very happy we're happy to have with us tonight Bob St. John. He's worked with us on projects before, and we can't even remember the last time we had a tour of the frog farm, so it's all going to be new. Do you remember, Jerry?
Been a while.
Yeah, I know. So Bob's retired, and like with all of us retired people, he also has other things. He's president of the Rouse's Point Champlain Historical Society. He's post commander of the American Legion 912 in Rouse's Point. He's adjutant of the Clinton County American Legion, and he's president of Rouse's Point Senior Housing Board. And that's all he's confessed to, so I don't know. And we're very pleased to have him, and I know you're going to enjoy this, so I'll turn it over to Bob.
Thank you, Helen. I want to thank everybody for being here, first of all. Some of you probably, like I know Tom or whatever, there have had relatives that worked at the frog farm or whatever in Perry Mills in the town of Champlain. If you want to go to the next,
I do.
Do you want the mic, Bob?
no, I won't, I don't think I'll need the mic.
Oops. All right, I didn't mean to do that either.
Yeah, I wish. No, I did have a '73 Riviera that I sold, but there we go. This is Mr. Neuenfeld. Email R. Neuenfeld, operator of the frog farm in Champlain. Just to give you, that is actually a bullfrog that he is hanging on to, and that is actually at the frog farm in Champlain. The canal system that he built and that did have buildings on top with electricity running through them or whatever. So we go to the next one. No? Okay, people have asked how I came about to, shall we say, inherit the frog farm or whatever. So I just want to give you a little bit of history of it. In September of 1933, Ulrich Racine purchases the property from Frank Whiteside. The dam that's on the river adjacent to the property is called the Whiteside Dam. That is now owned by New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, that dam. In 1937, Mr. Neuenfeld and his wife Marguerite came from Wisconsin, Oshkosh, to Champlain and purchased the property from Ulrich and started the Champlain Frog Farm. From this time through 1950, he built the infrastructure of the frog farm and operated it until his death in 1954. March 1965, property was awarded by a referee's deed to Albertine M. Lambert. She happened to be his secretary in that took care of all his paperwork and everything on the property. And she kind of ran it up until 1962. And as later in the program, I'll let you know why she decided that at that time to stop. In November 11th, 1965, they sold the property to Clifford and Della LaPlante, and at that time she was residing back in Brownsville, Quebec. She came down from Montreal to help him in his business and that, and so she went back up there after she sold it. Clifford and Della themselves didn't live there. They rented out the house to different individuals over the years. January of 1967, the Rutland Railroad bed was purchased from the Rutland Railroad by Clifford and Della LaPlante. That is now the driveway that comes onto the property. At one time, if you were going to try and see about arranging a tour, walking tour up there on the property, and the first thing when you come in, there's a red brick building there that belongs to the village of Champlain. That's where Champlain used to get their water, off the river, down the mill race, and that's part of this mill race that's here. And Champlain used to get their water from there. They had pumps in there. They would chlorinate the water and then send the water out through their water system. And that, where that building is, used to be the driveway to come into the property at that time. But once the Rutland Railroad bed was purchased, that driveway now became that, from that railroad bed. In May of 1970, Carl Marquardt, his wife Edith, and son Ronald purchased the property from Clifford and Della LaPlante. September 1983, Ron Marquardt and his wife Geraldine, my mother, became sole owners of the property. When my father passed, she married Ron, and so they were both living up there at the time. In 2000, my daughter purchased 1.5 acres from my stepfather and mother, and she put her double wide on that portion of the property. My stepfather passed away in 2001. So in 2003, my wife and I, we purchased the property from my mother, giving her a life lease on the property, and up until her passing in 2014. So we took the time, my wife and I, in 2014 to 2015, to have the house kind of renovated, and then we moved up there in 2015. Before that, I lived in the village of Rouse's Point, but when my mother and stepfather got married, 1978, I was up there taking care of the property then. So I've been taking care of that property since 1978. So, do you want to go to the next one? Okay. Mr. Neuenfeld actually started in the early 1900s with a business in Chicago. Him and a partner were in a building where they had cast iron vats in the basement, where they had frogs, live frogs, and turtles. And they provided frog legs and turtles for turtle soup to the bars in the Chicago area. This is in the early 1900s. But he also, what you're seeing here is in 1905, he was awarded a patent from the U.S. Patent Office for what they called a sanitary frog basket. Back then, they used to use live frogs in the Great Lakes for fishing. And the problem is that the frogs would be sitting out there in the boats or whatever, or in the sun or whatever, and they'd die. So they wanted live bait for the fish. So he applied for a patent of a sanitary frog basket. It's a regular basket that had a hinged top with permeable canvas. So what they would do was take the water out of the lakes, put it on top of the canvas, it would go through, keep the frogs hydrated, and keep them alive. So they could utilize that to catch the fish on the Great Lakes. So as far as what he might have made from this patent or whatever, we have no idea. But he was awarded the patent from the U.S. Patent Office. You go to the next, okay. This is the early 1900s, where 1920s. This is where he was operating out of Chicago. This is the little truck that they had with Neuenfeld's frog market that went around supplying the frog legs and that to the the different bars and everything. This occurred until Prohibition. What was happening was, before Prohibition, all the bars, you could have all the frog legs that you wanted to eat as long as you purchased the alcohol. So there was no charge for the frog legs or the turtle soup as long as you sat there and bought the alcohol. Well, once the Volstead Act came into being with Prohibition, all of a sudden the business kind of died out. So at that time, around 1923, he went back to Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and he opened up a frog farm there in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And there's a couple, you can probably go to the, okay, we'll stop with that one. There's a couple articles dated 1923. Croakless frogs raised in Oshkosh. To reach maturity in the frying pan without ever having emitted a single croak is the fate of 1 million frogs raised here each year. That's how many frogs that he raised at his frog farm. The frogs are hatched, they're fooled into thinking it's winter all the time, fattened and their legs marketed. Each year, 2 million legs leave here to be browned in butter and cracker crumbs the country over. Emil Neuenfeld is the man who has made this city probably the greatest frog city in the country today. His city of frogs is located in his diminutive backyard. The million frogs are kept in concrete trenches, 50 feet long and 6 feet wide. Each is fitted with a refrigerating plant and running water. The frogs are brought in from nearby creeks and marshes. During the harvest season, as many as 50 men are employed. By means of the refrigerating plant, Neuenfeld leads the frogs to believe that winter has come. Their croaking cease at once. They are fattened and the legs marketed without causing the neighbors the slightest inconvenience. From another article in August of 1923, from his backyard farm ranch near Oshkosh, Wisconsin, he ships 2 million frog legs a year. Again, they're kept in the trenches. When an order is received, the required number is scooped from a trench and the frogs are placed in a tank of water. It is charged with electricity. This kills the frogs, straightens out their legs, and makes amputation easy. So it made it easier for them. Instead of, that frog that's sitting there or whatever, you've got him where he's stretched out and amputate the legs. In 1933, the operation that he had in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, he sold it to his son Richard. And then in 1937 is when he actually moved out here into Champlain and started the frog farm business here in Champlain. I say here, we're in Plattsburgh, but in Champlain. And actually in Perry Mills, or Perry's Mills, as the old pronunciation used to be. This here is showing that the employees that are here, which he averaged 10 to 12 employees year round in his operation in Perry Mills. What you're seeing there is where they are cutting the frog legs off and putting them in these little containers, and then he had in the building, and I'll show you this, if you can all see this building right here. This is the actual where he would take the frogs in, cut the legs off. And then he had a walk-in cooler in there where he had ice houses on the property, so he would keep the ice in the coolers, and he'd have trays where he would keep the frog legs on in there until he just, got orders for them or whatever. The bodies of the frogs, they would then throw them into the garage area, and the local farmers would come pick them up and put them into their fields for fertilizer. So the whole frog was used. It didn't just sit there and rot away or whatever. So, this magazine, North Country Life, which is dated winter of 1953, there was an article by Marjorie L. Porter. And that was where the first picture, the very first picture that you saw up there of Mr. Neuenfeld is from, when she took that picture and then gave the article. 5-acre piece of swampland on the north bank of the Great Chazy River was gradually filled in. The ancient stone wall of the sawmill just below the dam being used as a section of the retaining wall. At present time, a group of buildings, including those for distribution, well-planned roadways, and a series of main and feeder cement-lined canals, grassy plots, and a cement-lined basin, in which moisture conditions may be regulated to simulate those of shallow pools, gave indication of the labor involved laying out and operating a fog farm. There, on the property, the canals are still there. I have cleaned out a lot of the property to be able to see the canals, whereas before it was brush and trees and everything in the area. I've cleaned it out, so now you can walk right up to the canals and look in to the canals that were there on the property. There are north-south canals and east-west smaller canals that fed. There were two major main canals on the property that they utilized, and then the water would be going to the other canal from one to the next. There was a large cement-lined basin with regulated water level, and that was to keep the right pH for the frogs, so that they could mate and produce more frogs. So, frogs were marketed 12 months of the year, and 20 to 30 pairs of legs weigh 1 pound. So, give you an idea. The rest of the frog was used by fertilizers on nearby farms. Frog legs were sold both by the dozen and by the pound to outlets not only in New York City but to other large cities. Because he had established a system when he was in Chicago where he not only did frog legs, but he also had live frogs that he would ship to the colleges, universities, high schools for their biology programs and that. And plus the restaurants that he supplied frog legs to from his operation in Chicago and then from Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So this is showing some of the employees that were there. And I have a listing here of some of the employees that worked at the frog farm. George Orville Tallman Sr., Joseph LePan, Orville Gooley, Peter Belrose, Noah Misek, a Mr. St. Andrew, Hiram Godin from Montreal, Geoffrey Lemieux from St. John's, Quebec, Sandy Phillips from Detroit, Michigan, Albertine Lambert from Montreal, and she's the one I said that got the property through a referee's deed. Andy Juno, 13 years of age, and that happens to be Tom, Juno's father here. I was lucky to be able to sit down with him one time at the Legion, and he told me that he had worked there, and so he gave me a little interview, and I'll share that with you. Okay. A Maurice Tatro, Ed Seymour, and Ed Batty. Now, Maurice Tatro, when this article appeared in 1992 on the Champlain Man Unearths Vestiges of Frog Farm, this came out in the paper. Maurice Tatro, at that time, lived in North Tonawanda, New York, and he sent a letter to my mother and stepfather. It says, I have read an article in the newspaper where you wanted information concerning the frog farm, and we're always looking for any information on the frog farm. Especially pictures which we have not ever been able to find. And we have put that, those are already in my, but I'm done, the whole operation, to see in the buildings on the canal system and everything. The canal was built near the dam which crosses the Chazy River and ended below where the pump house is. The purpose of the canal was to store frogs during the winter months mostly. The water flow was controlled at the canal entrance. The canal was divided into many sections. Slots were on each side of the cement canal. Screens were placed in those slots to separate the frogs while letting the flow of water through. What they had was cages with the chicken wire, is what it was. And they were made there with the wooden sides or whatever just to hold the chicken wire together. And then those were placed in the canal system. The water would flow through it, and of course it would keep the heavier, the bigger frogs from sitting or laying on the smaller leopard frogs or whatever, especially the big bullfrogs. Only a certain amount of frogs were placed in each pen. This eliminated to a great extent the piling of frogs on each other, which was caused the death of the weaker frogs. The goal was to keep the frogs alive during the winter. Wooden dams were placed before each screen to control the flow of water in each pen. Excuse me. The flow of water also stopped the freezing during the winter. The frogs that tended to pile near the screens were taken out first and the legs shipped to different areas. Very few frogs came from around the area. Some came from Vermont, most came from Canada, as far north as 50 miles away. The frogs were bought by the pound. There were ideal locations in Canada where in the late fall months the frogs would migrate towards the water and shore areas for winter hibernation. Fences were strung up so the frogs could not reach their destination and pile up against the fences. They were then bagged and brought to the frog farm. And this is one of the interesting things that in this letter, there was a duty fee at the customs. Some did not want to pay. So there was a duty on frogs coming out of Canada at the time. So they would bring their frogs about a half a mile from the American-Canadian border. These were picked up. Looking across the railroad tracks towards Canada, and that's the bed that's here now up towards Canada, there was a road to the left which goes into Canada. At that time, there was only one farmhouse on that road. There was a gate at the border crossing, but no customs house. The road was rarely used so that the crossing could be done quite safely. So they would bring the frogs in, get away from not having to pay the duty, and so they were smuggling frogs. Who knew? During Prohibition, it was liquor. Before that, it was frogs. Or even after that, it was frogs, I should say. The first people who started to work at the frog farm were Hiram Godin from Montreal, Geoffrey Lemieux from St. John's, Quebec, Sandy Phillips from Detroit, a woman secretary, the last name I believe Godin from Montreal. She would take care of Mr. Neuenfeld's business. And he goes on, Mr. Neuenfeld was a nice man, and I have to say, the working price then was 25 cents an hour. During the Second World War, I do not know, as I was serving in the armed forces. The platform you are standing on in the photo, which is this platform here, which was actually the foundation of that building that was there, with a second story was used for tenants for the frog farm. So they had a tenant that lived up above in there. The road, if it is still there, following the Chazy River around the property, was constructed of stones from the river and was used for vehicles and a walkway. So there is along the river, there is a path that goes along the river that he built, taking river stones out of the river and piling them there to make that roadway around where the canal is. So, if you want to continue, okay, there's the employees. Go again. Okay. Before we get into this, I just want to give you, this is the interview with Andy Juno and this was in the summer of 2012. When Andy stated that when he was 13 years old, him and Emil Tatro would go to the frog farm after school and work till 10 to 10:30 p.m. and skin the frog legs. They were paid 10 cents per hour. The manager at that time, Sandy Phillips, cut the legs off. Also said that Ed Seymour and Edward Babby worked there also. When, in May of 2016, I can't remember if I was talking, I think I was talking with Teresa Ben at the time, and she sent me a postcard. And remember, I believe she was the postmistress or whatever in the Champlain post office. So she says, just read the article on the frog pond. People call it frog pond, frog farm. The names were back and forth. At one time, frogs were shipped to different hospitals in Baltimore, Maryland. They were used for labs. They were mailed in large, flat containers. The odor was unbearable. Mr. Neuenfeld was something else. His wife worked right with him. So she sent me a postcard with that information. So, because we put it out there, anybody who has any information would like to share it. So this is the ads that were at the time. You can see 1948, 1949. So we buy live frogs, 25 cents a pound, Champlain Frog Farm. In August, frog legs for sale, small grass, 75 cents a pound, mediums $1 a pound, and bullfrogs $1.25 per pound. You can buy the frog legs right from him and take them home, prepare them, and have them for whatever meal that you wanted. In June, 25 cents, dressable sizes, and then he also sold ice. He had 3 ice houses on the property where he would harvest the ice in the wintertime, and he would store the ice in the ice houses, using that for his big walk-in cooler and also selling the ice. He's a man that wanted to make money. It's, you know, if you want to go to the next one. Okay. Emil Neuenfeld, 78, fatally stricken on trip. Friends and acquaintances of Emil Neuenfeld, owner of the Champlain Frog Farm, were shocked to hear of his death on June 17, 1954, after having been stricken with a fatal illness while en route with his wife to Detroit, Michigan, where the couple planned to spend a few days vacation. Detroit, Michigan is where his son was living at the time. When about 15 miles out of Albany on June 11th, Mrs. Neuenfeld, who was driving, noticed her husband apparently collapsed, and he immediately took him to Memorial Hospital in Albany. The stricken man never regained consciousness and passed away there last Thursday. He was born in Oshkosh, Wisconsin in 1876. His wife and he came to Champlain in 37, where they established the frog farm, which they have since operated. And then it goes on to say, besides his wife who's surviving, his remains were taken to Oshkosh, where committed services were held, and burial was made in the family plot. Oh, let's go to the next one, Helen. Let me see, just want to, okay. In 1959, his wife, daughter, and son Richard of Grosse Pointe, Michigan, visited the farm. So they didn't run it anymore. Richard didn't want anything to do with the farm. He had his own business out in Detroit. So they visited or whatever. They had an auction Saturday, June 23rd, 1962. At that time, it was called the Richard G. Neuenfeld Farm because it no longer was with Mr. Neuenfeld and his wife. It kind of passed to him. Like I said, he didn't want it. So they had an auction, and it was ordered by order of Emmett Duquette, the Clinton County Sheriff. So in this auction, and it tells you a complete bedroom suite with chest of drawers, vanity, twin beds, goes on and on. A Chevy pickup truck with only 39,000 miles, excellent condition, a good car trailer, and a set of snow tires that they had this auction. Now, as far as what proceeds came from the auction or whatever, we don't know. But they did have an auction. So, and then shortly thereafter, if you remember the timeline, was when Albertine Lambert in 1965 was awarded the property. She kept it up and kept running the business. November 7th, 1960, an article in the Press Republican. That's okay.
Too fast?
No, it's good there. That'll be the next thing. in the Press Republican, November 7th, 1960, there was an article. You wouldn't happen to have a ton or so of frogs for sale. Mrs. Albertine Lambert, manager of the E.R. Neuenfeld Frog Ranch, and now it's become a ranch, says frogs are a bit scarce this year. The drought last summer dried up a lot of eggs, she explains. However, despite the fact that the farm's annual production appears to be running under the 400,000 turnover, the amphibian is still holding his own in the nation's market. Frog raising is a year-round business at the 5.5-acre ranch. It all began in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, when the late Emil Neuenfeld began selling frogs. Today, Neuenfeld's son Richard is grand mogul of the vast frog empire, which includes the local farm as well as markets in Chicago and Detroit. The business, which is netted as much as $200,000 a year, relies heavily upon frogs from the local farm. Here on a marshy tract surrounded by the Chazy River, a quarter-mile of winding covered canals contain hundreds of boxes of frogs in various stages of development. The local farm site was chosen by the elder Neuenfeld after extensive searching for just the right conditions for frog raising, said Mrs. Lambert, the frog expert. This is the article in the paper, so now they're calling her an expert. So, at the first sign of spring, adult frogs awaken from their winter hibernation. They mate, then disappear for about 2 weeks. Then the frogs who have not eaten all winter begin to eat everything in sight. In the spring, their legs are like pencils, says Mrs. Lambert. Frogs do all their growing during the summer months. At the start of the spawning season, usually in mid-April, farm hands gather the tapioca-like eggs from the boxes and transfer them to the hatchery. It's fun to watch them, says Mrs. Lambert. They all pop open at once, just like porcupine quills. The Champlain farm, which produces and stores frogs for the winter trade, is supplemented by frog agents who furnish the summer supply. So all these people that are bringing these bags of frogs or whatever, they're calling them frog agents. Okay? They are usually freelance frogmen who earn extra money selling directly to the Neuenfeld markets. Orders, bookkeeping, and buying for the local farm are handled by Mrs. Lambert. Edward Seymour, who lives in a second house on the premise, which is this one, the apartment above, handles the outside work in the frog runs and in the slaughter and shipping departments. 3 different frogs are raised at the ranch: bullfrogs, green frogs, and leopard grass frogs. Most frogs from the ranch are shipped live in specially constructed crates, 6 to 1,000 at a time, to schools, universities, hospitals, and experimental laboratories. So they would ship these out. They would ship them by train. The Rutland Railroad, which had a what do you call siding, but the actual building, shipping building or whatever in Champlain, they would take them there. And they also did it with the post offices. In fact, one year, from what I understand, I have not seen a report on it or whatever, but supposedly Mrs. Lambert had a truck, and she was delivering some of these frog cases to Champlain to be shipped out, and there was an accident with the truck at the underpass, and there was crates of frogs broken open and everything all into the underpass. All these frogs were all over the place and everything, getting squashed by the traffic going through or whatever. So from what I understand, it was quite the mess. Domestic frog legs for food are too expensive now, says Mrs. Lambert. Most frogs whose legs end up on a chef's platter come from India or Japan. These can be imported despite duties and shipping charges for legs at the cost of raising them here. Besides, says Mrs. Lambert, there are different variety with bigger legs most chefs would rather handle. So more than likely these are, just like anything else, force-fed or whatever, to enlarge them or whatever. The local farm is equipped to handle 80 tons of frogs at one time. Although currently the figure is much lower, business is getting better all the time, according to the farm custodians. Although fewer frogs are sold for their eggs each year, more and more are in demand for hospital or experimental work. It seems that the upstate's New York's most unusual farm may be in business for a long time to come. That was in 1960, and 2 years later it was done. So now these pictures here, this is when Clifford and Della LaPlante owned the property, and they called this the Pine Tree Ranch. Okay, I'm telling you, the River Ranch, any different names or whatever. You know, Frog Farm, Frog Pond. Then when they got it, it was the River Ranch. So at that time, when they had it, they tried selling it. And this is what Clifford LaPlante had typed up. Description of the Pine River Ranch is as follows. Approximately 7 to 10 acres of land. There was only 5 acres of land. Okay? Bordered on 2 sides by the Great Chazy River, which it was. Okay? The banks of the river have good wall of stone and cement to prevent the water from washing the soil away. That was fine until we had the flood of 1996 and the flood of 1998. And I'll show you pictures of what the property looked like in the flood of 1996. There is a jetty dam that is built 700 feet out into the river, which controls the flow of the water through the aqueduct trench. He built this jetty in 1950, and what it did was it directed the water in the river, where if you come up and take a look, the water on the other side is lower, it's higher on this side, and that was the water that fed the lower canal. The aqueduct trench could be screened at either end and used as a nice trout stream right on the property. Well, I've never seen any trout up there, but, you know. The aqueduct trench is well constructed of cement sides and bottom is in good shape. All the canals up there are not just walls into the ground. It is an actual, has a cement floor and the cement sides. So it wouldn't, water going through wouldn't erode it away. Now there's because of it hasn't been used, and over the years some of the walls have started to collapse in. But for the main part, the big part of the canals and that are still intact. There's a good place to swim right in the Jetty Dam, and the fishing here is real good. The fishing still is real good, because we have people that come up, especially kids, that come up during the summer. In fact, they started just like 3 weeks ago. They come up, they fish there in the river. We let them on the property. We just tell them, if you're going to come up, try and be quiet. And also, if you bring anything in, you take it back with you. Because we have smallmouth bass, there's muskie there on the above the dam and that. So we do get a lot of people that come in to fish. There is an abundance of firewood of all kinds right on the property, easy to get to. Problem was, when he was talking about that, these were big trees. Some of them are still there. When I was clearing out the property, we had a lot of them taken out, and so that way we could open the property to anybody that wanted to come up and actually see the system. Property also has a large variety of beautiful shade trees everywhere. We still have a lot of trees on the property everywhere. This is the one that kind of got me and my mother and stepfather. It says, a very fine trailer park could easily be built here. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's definitely what we would want on the property. This property would make a beautiful estate. Well, I call it an estate now because I take care of all the property, all the mowing and everything, so it's like having an estate to take care of. There are 6 rooms on the first floor. A modern kitchen with handmade birch cupboards, stainless steel sink, electric stove, dining area, living room with a nice fireplace. 2 bedrooms upstairs, good sized bath with a tub, shower. Um, the interior of the house is beautifully finished with hardwood floors everywhere, and they're still there. When my stepfather had it, when his mother and father weren't living there, he had it all carpeted. We took all the carpet out and back to the original wood floors that were there when Mr. Neuenfeld built it in 1937. The walls are all plastered and like new. The walls are actually cement panels, like tiles. That's what all the walls are. In fact, before we moved up there, we wanted to have it where we could be in the kitchen and still see the living room area. So we had a hole cut through from the kitchen to the dining room area and the living room. They actually went through 7 cement blades to be able to cut that hole in there because these cement tile panels that were there, the whole wall. The basement area, I have 2 steel I-beams down the center of the house to be able to support all this weight. And then you have the cinder blocks on the outsides. But you had the 2 steel I-beams to be able to support the weight of the house when he had it done. The basement consists of a nice heated garage on one side, and the other side is a storage and workroom with built-in cupboards, bathroom downstairs, and a shower. And in the back is a fireplace, also downstairs. So we have a fireplace downstairs, we got one up in the living room area. We don't use them, but they are there. So, okay, you can go. Okay, this is the house now that we actually live in. This is it's actually 2.5 stories. You got the basement that's down below. If you want to go to the next one, okay. This here, you can see, this is this building right here where they had the apartment above, and then where they had the cooler and the lead table to cut the frog legs off, and then the 3 garage doors where they put the frog bodies. This is one of his ice houses that were on the property with the 3 of them that are there, and this is the back, the side of the house where we live now. Okay, go to the next. Okay. This was the flood of 1996. We had all that rain, and the river actually came up. I had water flowing right through the property. This is one of the walkways coming down. And what it did was it just tore up all the topsoil. And that's my daughter Amber sitting there. That's the main canal down at the river edge. And it used to be that I could take my mower and I could ride right across to mow the path on the other side. And you can see what the river did. It took all the topsoil and everything out. When the county was going around and digging out the ditches or whatever, we asked them for the topsoil, what they were digging out. We got it. I filled it all back in. And in 1998, we had the other flood. I don't think I have pictures of that one. This is still 96. You can see what it did it exposed all the rock. I had it all filled in. I had, if anybody know, Emerson Grimshaw came up. We had it dumped there. He came up with his bulldozer and filled it back in. And then again, like I said, you go to the next. This was the canal system. These were on the lower end of the canal system. There was I had a bridge there that I had built with pressure treated lumber and that, and then it was laid on top of railroad ties. Had lots of railroad ties in the property. He used a lot of those to make canals just to divert the water away or whatever. So there was no way to get any equipment in there or whatever. So I had to actually take those railroad ties, put them back so I could put another bridge across when the bridge is there now. So But in '98, it did the same thing, and I had to actually put the ties back up to put the bridge. Okay. Now, okay. This is on the property. This is May of 2020. Champlain Telephone Company came up because we have NICEAG poles on the property for the electricity. And they asked the telephone company all over to lower their telephone lines. So they came onto the property. As the truck, which was a dual wheel, as the truck was backing up, the dual wheel sunk. They were able to get it out. They were able to drive out. So once they were out, they said, well, gee, you want us to fix this? No, don't fix it. I want to see what might be going on here. So I had a 6-foot bar, and I took the bar and I put it in the hole, and it kept going and going. The 6-foot bar disappeared, just the end of it. So I said, what's going on here? So I called my buddy. He came up with his backhoe, and we started digging there. Come to find out, what is there, and that's the driveway that you see off to the other side, the old Rutland Railroad bed. He started digging up. Well, what was there, you probably go to the next one, Helen, okay, was a cement vault that's sitting in the ground with 3 valves in it. Now, the upper canal, if you see it right here, this is the river, this was the upper canal. There was a valve box with valves so he could take water from the upper part and direct it down into the upper canal. We didn't know at the time that these even existed. They're not shown anywhere on this hand-drawn map. It was only because of the ground collapsing. What they had done was they had put railroad ties over the top of these valves on this vault and then covered it with dirt. The railroad ties eventually rotted, and that's what happened. The truck went down into that. So we dug it up and we found the 3 valves. There's the front of the house. So what we did was we took all the ties out. There's no way you could do anything with the valves because it was a cement lined basin type thing where they were actually in the cement. And we think, because I'm going to get even further on, that all these valves on the property have all been left open. There's no way that you can shut them now, but they were all left open. So all we could do here was just to bury the valves back up, would just bring in the dirt, fill it back in, without the ties, without any void or whatever, and fill it back in, is what we did. So, I have other pictures up here where you can actually close up of the valves that are there. And we never did take them out or nothing. They're still there. And to the other, that's the end of that one, Helen, okay? But last year, as I mentioned or whatever, with the dam is now owned by New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. The upper part of the dam is a breeding area for the lamprey eel. And you remember the lamprey are the ones that are out in the lake destroying the sport fish or whatever. Over the years, DEC and Fish and Wildlife have come up and treated above the river, trying to eliminate the lamprey. In 1994, they came up and rebuilt the whole dam up there. And it still didn't stop the lamprey from continuing getting up into the upper portion of the river. They even put barriers, steel flanges or whatever, on the face of the dam, so that way the lamprey couldn't go up over the dam. Well, it's all ledge. In fact, The dam itself, this is a picture of the front of the dam. And this was just last year, that what they decided to do was they built a big cofferdam, stopping the water. This is the cofferdam, stopping the water from coming into this area. And they brought in one of those drills to drill into the ledge. This is the backside of the dam. Okay. Backside where the water, they got the cofferdam here to stop the water. This is normally all water in here. And what they did was they drilled and put epoxy in all these cracks and everything, because this is all stone ledge. We thought this was all like a regular riverbed. It's not. And this is only 8 feet deep. That's the deepest part of with the river. It's all a ledge. It's not sand. It's not soil or whatever. So what they did was they cleared all this stone and everything away, and then they drilled holes into that ledge to fill it with epoxy, because that's how the lamprey were getting up above the dam. They were going into these cracks and crevices in the bed and coming up into the river through those areas. So, so when I say open valves, when they did this, it must have changed the hydraulic pressure in the river into that ledge area, because once they let that water back in, all of a sudden I've got water flowing into the property, into that old canal system. That water is still. What the problem is this mill race that's right here. They found that there is a hole in that ledge in here, and that water is coming in and going in under the driveway into the canal system. I had water flowing all winter long. It never froze. The water is flowing all winter long through there. So I don't know what it is doing to the property. Fish and Wildlife, Army Corps of Engineers, and DEC have all been up there. What they are proposing to do this fall, when the water level is usually the lowest, is putting up another cofferdam, and they're going to come up and they're going to drill in this area, hopefully try and fill it. And then they're going to be building a berm across to where there'll be no more water coming in there, only when there's a high water level. But hopefully that'll take care of the water that is coming in on the property. So it looks like it's following the old valves. The valves that are in the canal system, the pipe, it's a 6-inch pipe, the water was full coming out of there. So then they had to put sandbags in the property to try and stop it, but it was coming under the bank, plus it was coming out of the pipe. So they configured a plastic piping system to put it back into the canals to try and get that flow there and go back out to the river. Because the two canals, the upper and the lower canal, join at the end. And then there's a outflow to the river there. So, and also on the lower part of the canal, there is another outflow where if he had a lot of water or whatever, he did a ditch, cement on the end, and the water would go back out into the river there also. So he could control the flow of water through the system. I came across this Rutland Newsliner article that the frog pond, and they actually drew a diagram, whatever. If you look at this house is turned, this house is turned, so they didn't draw it to what it looked like. But there's the Rutland Railroad bed, there's the driveway that did come in, And it's showing up here where this is the lower canal, this is the upper canal, and the water would come in. There's a valve box there to bring the water to the upper one, and then it would flow in from the jetty in through the bottom in here. There's that little ditch that he had to go back out into the river. So, but this gives you a layout of kind of like what the property looked like when they drew this up. So, there's an article in here. It's quite lengthy article. But one of the things that this, trying to see,
You find it?
Warren Dodgson was the one that wrote up the article. And there's stuff in here that is not true. There's stuff in here that is conjecture. Okay? Just the thing is, I mean, it does talk about it worked like a hatchery, purchase stock was divided into boxes or whatever. Starting from scratch, he built everything that was needed, including the concrete holding ponds and canal, to divert the fresh water from the river. If you get a chance, and we welcome anybody that wants to come up and take a tour of it, where you can actually see the concrete or whatever. It's amazing what he did from 1937 to 1950 with the amount of concrete that is there. These cement lined basins. I have 7 cement walkways on the upper canal where they used to walk down there to go into the upper canal to grab the frogs and that out of the canal system. And those 2 are cement bottoms with cement sides. The boards have all rotted out and gone long time ago, but they're still there going down to the upper canal. This is what I'm thinking is I don't know, I can never prove that was the case, but when this gentleman did this article, and I don't know where he got his information, but it says, circumstances were not kind to Mr. Neuenfeld. As the possibility of another world war became likely in the 1930s, the family became the focus of local suspicion and rumor. It was said Ernest Neuenfeld was a Nazi spy. Okay? The government required all citizens of foreign birth to declare any associations with enemy groups. As the story goes, Ernest Neuenfeld did, and was therefore interned at a camp in Georgia for the remainder of the war. Whether that's true or not, but that's what is in this article. In 1948, 3 people held up Mr. Neuenfeld at the frog pond and got away with over 200 pounds of live frogs, later to be caught by the police. Okay? Well, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but whoever gave him this information, he put it in print. Even though his personal life while living in the area had its ups and downs, the business forged ahead between 1936 to at least 1953, or 56 or 58 unconfirmed. It actually went to 1962 after his death. So, and it talks about where the Rowan had a 422-foot spur track south of the main at Old Route 11. Old Route 11 is what Perry Mill Road is right now. That's the old Route 11. So, am I correct, Calvin? That's okay. The spur had been used to load pulpwood probably daily at certain times of the year and was a common stop. Considering the fact cars have been switched in and out at Perry Mills until 1935, and that the Rutland sometimes loaded milk onto waiting trains, perhaps special consideration might have extended to frogs too. Just a little food for thought. So anyway, that's my presentation of the frog farm in Champlain. So, and again, I have talked with Helen or whatever, that there's a possibility with the Clinton County Historical Association setting up possibly a tour to where people can come up and take a look at it. There is no charge for it. We do not have a museum at the end of the tour, a gift shop or whatever, where you've got to go through and purchase frog items. We don't have that, okay? No T-shirts, you know, nothing of that sort. It's just
It's an idea.
that's all I need is some more, you know. But anyway, so I just want to thank everybody for being here. This is my passion, and anybody that knows me as far as history, as far as the area, whether it be military, whether it be you know, this thing about the frog farm or whatever. This is just my passion, the same way it is like with Jerry and Helen and Roger. This is what we live for. So again, I want to thank you for being here and listening to me. Maybe I drone on a little bit too much, I don't know, but anyway, thank you very much.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, okay.
I think we should thank you, Bob St. John and Janice and your family, for saving the story of this unique part of our history. Because if it wasn't for you and your family taking an interest in it, it could be a campground, right? So you and your family deserve a lot of credit for what you have done
Thank you.
with this property.
Thank you for that.
I never realized, Sandy Phillips is my uncle, and I never realized he was from Michigan. And
Oh.
I didn't know how he got here.
Oh,
That fills in another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, so now you know, so.
Which issue of the newsletter? Which issue of the newsletter?
Oh, for the,
Newsletter.
it's, fall of 1995,
Okay, thank you.
volume 7, number 93,
You analyzed.
so, yep. Anybody else? Yes, Roger?
How'd they feed these?
Yeah, I have
Did they feed?
Actually, well, I guess they did feed them. What they fed them or whatever, I don't know. But of course, if you've got, like they were saying, with the cold water or whatever, it would keep them, you know, where the hibernation or whatever, so they wouldn't. But then in the spring, yes, they would have to feed them. It was never revealed to me what they might have, any type of meal or whatever that they, you know, gave them. I don't know.
How long does it take for a frog to grow to be big enough for frog legs?
I don't know that either. I just know I like frog legs. You know, whether I'm there or not, you know, I take a chance. I go down to Jade. They got them there or whatever. And, you know.
Do you still have, is there any frogs left?
Oh yeah, there's frogs there on the property all over. In fact, ask my wife. She hates frogs. And she has no problem with the snakes that happen to be up there grabbing the frogs. And of course, there's not that many snakes up there either or whatever. But yes, in fact, in the summertime or whatever, we'll be sitting at the house and down at the, you know, where we've turned this area into like a fire pit or whatever. We sit down there with friends at night, and you can hear the bullfrogs and you know, croaking at night. So they're still there.
Is the water tower still there?
No, water tower was torn down when the village did away with the water system there. In fact, I think
75 or 76 it was taken down.
that they actually tore it down. So
Because they used to fish bass. My father used to fish bass right next to that. You
right
go
down,
there,
right, what they
and
call
you're-
Flat Rock area.
Yeah, and there was a ledge out there. You toss it over the ledge and the bass were right there. And
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's like when Champlain had the water system there was no filtration system. So, I mean, they had a dam that would stop any of the big stuff from coming down. That's what they're gonna work on as far as they're gonna scrape all of that dirt and everything off that ledge this fall to be able to get in there to fill all the holes or whatever. Then they'll put the dirt back in or whatever, but there shouldn't be any water coming through. But remember the village of Champlain, so if there was anything, little fine stuff or whatever in the pumps and that, and out in the system it goes. You know, They would chlorinate it to disinfect it or whatever, but other than that, so they stopped that. They have their own wells now, and you know that they have. So that building is just falling apart. You know, and the village doesn't have anything to be able to, you know, do anything to fix it up or whatever. There's holes in the side. The bricks are falling in or whatever. They've got it all boarded up with no trespassing signs, but you know, it's just deteriorating.
So are the lamprey under control? Or
No, in fact, what we have received notification that this fall, they're gonna apply more lampricide above the dam to be able to try and control it. And now what they're doing is, when they rebuilt the dam, they put a cage system in to where in the spring they come in and they drop a cage in there to try and trap the lamprey. Before, what they did was they would take the lamprey out of the trap and just take a couple of them for biology purposes, but the rest of them, they would just bang them against the dam wall and...
Damn wall.
No. The dam wall. And then they would just leave it in the river for the fish to eat or whatever. This year, they're doing something different. They want to try and get an idea of how many are in the lake. So as they trap them, every day they come down, they grab them, they mark them, tag them somehow, and release them back into the river to see if any of them show up out in the lake when they're marked or whatever, to see if they get an idea of how many are there. This is something new that they've done this year. So.
Thank you.
So it was kind of exciting to have this water flowing
Oh yeah.
that had never been
Yes,
there
it
before.
was very, very exciting when we flooding the property. Yeah, in fact, they were surprised when they left the cofferdam go, and I was out mowing, and all of a sudden I see this water coming out. So I went up to them and said, guys, you might have corrected this problem, but you've created another one. What? Come on down, take a look. They came down and looked. Oh my God, where's this coming from? So they thought it was from the dam area where the valves used to be, because when DEC redid the dam, all they did was take the valves out and cap the pipes. So they thought maybe it was coming there. They put dye in. There was no dye from that area. So I said, well, let's try the mill race. They tried the mill race, they put the dye in, and sure enough, the dye showed up in the water down on the lower part of the property. That's how they found out that it was coming through and going down below.
I've never heard when we were kids, Bobby and I, we went to school together.
Yes, all three of us.
Yes, and I never heard anybody talk about the frog pond being used in the 60s at all.
Yeah.
I never heard anybody
Just-
mention that before. I always thought it was prior to that, it
Yeah.
closed up.
Oh, 62 was when Marjorie Lambert decided that it was, you know, because like I said, newspaper article was 1960, when she talked about it wasn't worth it anymore or whatever, and in 62 was when it ceased operation completely. So, yeah. Yes, Karen?
Would have gone on,
Pardon?
or did she just decide she wasn't gonna do it anymore?
She wasn't gonna, it wasn't worth monetarily to do it anymore, so she decided to, since she was deeded the property, best thing to do is to sell it and wash her hands of it. In fact, she was up in Quebec when she actually sold the property. So she had already gone back up to Canada. So, yep.
Not a question, just an aside, Dad. I have a coworker, I work for a place, that has a business in Williston, Vermont. And coincidentally, we do water testing, but one of my coworkers in the Williston office is from the Stowe area, and they had come up for a, company party in the summertime, and just happened to be when the water was very low, and they were all, Dad gave a tour, like he usually does, and she was so interested in it, she went back and was, researching other things, and found, I don't know if it was through the library or, through a historical society in Stowe, but found reference to people in Stowe taking frogs to a frog farm in northern New York to be paid for it. And she was never expecting to find that kind of information. She's like, I know where that is.
And that's new to me.
What's
No.
kind of unusual is, how did he end up coming from Oshkosh, Champlain, New York?
That was never stated why he did that. It's just like, you know, when he decided to end the business in Chicago, you know. Oh, one other thing that I need to bring up, and this is, Mr. and Mrs. Neuenfeld both are buried in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I also belong to what they call Find a Grave. So I'm able to go out and find a lot of information through cemeteries all throughout the United States or whatever on where people might be buried. And when Marguerite, his wife, passed away, she passed away in 1956 at the age of 63. And you got to remember, like I said, my stepfather, Ron Marquardt, his father and mother bought the property from Della LaPlante, Clifford and Della. And this is her obituary, Marguerite's obituary in 1956. Graveside services were held today at 3 p.m. at Ellenwood Cemetery for Mrs. Marguerite Neuenfeld, 63, who died Friday at Champlain, New York at 12:30 p.m. Services were conducted by the Reverend Richard Hill, pastor of the First Presbyterian Church. Mrs. Neuenfeld, never a resident of Oshkosh, because he remarried, because his son Richard was not his mother. Okay? Was the widow of E.R. Neuenfeld, formerly of Oshkosh, who died in 1954. The remains arrived at the Marquardt Funeral Home in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, from Champlain. The Marquardt Funeral Home had been in operation for 120 years in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So I just found it kind of quirky or whatever that here, you know, Marquardt's purchased the property, and then she ends up at a funeral home, the Marquardt Funeral Home in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So it's, you know. And their son, Richard, had a business in Detroit where, had a restaurant on Fort Street in Detroit where he sold frog legs. And I went out and I was able to get his obituary, and he passed away at the age of 102. So that's their son Richard. So, so anyway, I'm sorry to have, it's just one of the things I forgot to mention. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Can you carry this?